I had always imagined that death would come like a thief in the night, unexpected and mysterious. But I never thought it would arrive so suddenly on an ordinary day. My name is Axel, and on the 9th of June, my life changed forever. I was descending the staircase at home, rushing as usual, when my foot slipped on the polished wood. I tumbled down, the world spinning violently around me, pain radiating through my body. Then came the cold, bone-deep chill that seeped into my very core as everything around me went dark. When I opened my eyes again, it wasn't in the same way as before. I was aware of my husband's frantic voice calling my name, but it sounded faint, like a distant echo. I realized I was no longer in control. My body felt foreign, limp, and unresponsive. My husband's arms held me as he carried me to the car, his voice trembling as he whispered reassurances I could barely comprehend. If you believe in God and near-death experiences, subscribe to Life at NDE today. Discover inspiring messages from God through powerful near-death stories that bring hope and understanding. Hit subscribe now and join us in spreading the light of faith. The drive to the hospital was agonizing, not because of the physical pain. I had grown strangely detached from it, but because I could see the terror etched into my husband's face. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. He glanced at me repeatedly, pleading with his eyes for me to stay awake, to hold on. I tried. I truly did. I clung to the sound of his voice like a lifeline, desperate to stay tethered to the world I knew. But something cold and relentless was pulling at me. As the minutes passed, the pull grew stronger. My breaths became shallow, each one a struggle against the icy force that seemed to drain the life out of me. My vision blurred, and for a moment, I thought I saw shadows moving at the edges of my awareness, dark, inevitable, and unyielding. Death was not the quiet surrender I had imagined. It was a force that claimed me, creeping closer with every beat of my weakening heart. Then, suddenly, the fight ended. A profound stillness washed over me, silencing the pain and fear. I felt myself release. It was as if I had shed my physical form, leaving behind the broken shell of my body. The world around me faded into a quiet void, and I hovered there, weightless and detached. I looked down and saw myself slumped in the passenger seat of the car. My husband was still there, his voice now distant, his tears streaming as he pleaded with me to wake up. But I couldn't respond. I wasn't in my body anymore. I was beside it, observing from a strange and weightless perspective. The sensation was surreal, as if the laws of the physical world no longer applied to me. I turned to face my husband, watching his mouth move in desperate prayers, begging God to save me. His pain was palpable, but I couldn't feel it the same way. I felt distant from his grief, as though I were seeing it through a veil. And then, without warning, everything changed. The chaotic noise of the car and my husband's cries disappeared. In their place came an overwhelming silence, a peace so profound it was almost tangible. I found myself in a realm that defied description, a place where time and space felt irrelevant. The colors here were unlike anything I had seen before, vivid, radiant, and alive in a way that no earthly hue could replicate. The air itself seemed to hum with energy, pure and untainted. I was standing or perhaps floating in a field of breathtaking beauty. The grass beneath me shimmered with an ethereal glow, soft and vibrant. Above me stretched a sky of perfect blue, unbroken and serene. A gentle warmth enveloped me, soothing and comforting. For the first time in my life, I felt a peace so complete that it silenced every worry, every fear, every thought. It was as if I had come home to a place I didn't know I had been searching for all along. In the distance, I noticed groups of people gathered. They were seated on the grass in a circle, their attention focused on a figure standing among them. The man was dressed in white, his presence commanding yet gentle. Even from afar, I could feel the calm authority he exuded. He spoke to the group with a voice that seemed to resonate beyond sound, reaching deep into the very essence of those who listened. Though I couldn't make out his words, I was drawn to him, captivated by the wisdom and kindness that emanated from him. Looking around, I realized there wasn't just one group. There were many, scattered across the vast expanse of this place. And yet, the same man in white stood at the center of each one, addressing them as if he could be everywhere at once. It didn't make sense, but it also didn't feel strange. Here, the impossible felt natural. I hesitated, unsure of what to do. My mind raced with questions. Was this heaven? It certainly felt divine, but it wasn't what I had expected. There were no golden gates or angelic choirs, no blinding light or grand proclamations. Instead, there was simplicity, a beauty so subtle and profound that it overwhelmed me. This place felt sacred, yet entirely different from the depictions I had always imagined. Summoning my courage, I began to walk toward one of the groups, my steps light and effortless. I had no clear intention other than to understand, to uncover the truth of where I was and why I had been brought here. As I approached, the man in white seemed to notice me, though his focus remained on those he was speaking to. I felt a warmth emanating from him, as if he were welcoming me without words. I found a spot to sit among the group, still unsure of what was happening or what was to come. But one thing was certain: this experience was unlike anything I could have ever imagined. And as I prepared to listen to the man in white, I felt a stirring within me, a sense that I was about to witness something extraordinary, something that would change me forever. As I settled into the circle, the man in white began to speak. His voice was unlike any I had ever heard, gentle yet commanding, filled with wisdom that resonated in every word. It wasn't just the sound of his voice, it was the way his words seemed to penetrate straight into the heart, bypassing all defenses and doubts. His presence radiated love and authority, and I found myself completely captivated. He spoke of many things, but his focus quickly turned to the future. "What I will show you is not set in stone," he began, his voice both solemn and tender. "It is a warning, a glimpse of what may come if hearts remain hardened and forgiveness is withheld." As he spoke, the air around us seemed to shimmer, and suddenly, I was no longer in the serene field. A vision unfolded before my eyes, vivid and all-encompassing. I saw the year 2025, a world both familiar and transformed. The images came in rapid succession, like scenes from a movie. Yet they felt more real than anything I had ever experienced. At first, there was a sense of hope. I saw technological advancements, medical breakthroughs, and moments of human triumph. Communities banded together to achieve remarkable feats. And for a fleeting moment, it seemed as though humanity was on the brink of something extraordinary. But then the vision darkened. The sense of hope was overshadowed by a growing shadow, a weight that seemed to press down on everything. The man in white spoke again, his voice carrying both sorrow and urgency. "Unforgiveness," he said. "It festers in the hearts of many, and its consequences are far-reaching." The images shifted, and I saw families torn apart by bitterness and unresolved grudges. Mothers and fathers turned away from their children, siblings estranged, friendships broken. The spirit of death loomed large, creeping silently through homes burdened by unforgiveness. I saw loved ones mourning the sudden loss of family members, their grief compounded by the knowledge that their last words had been spoken in anger. The pain of regret was palpable, a wound that could not be healed. Among the grieving faces, I saw people of incredible potential: scientists, doctors, artists, and leaders whose lives were abruptly cut short. Their brilliance, their contributions to the world, were snuffed out before they could fully flourish. The void left by their absence was devastating, not just to their families but to entire communities. The man in white's voice echoed in my mind. Their hearts were burdened by bitterness. They chose not to forgive, and the weight of that choice sealed their fate. Tears filled my eyes as the vision continued. I saw a line of souls, countless in number, standing in a place that felt heavy with sorrow. Each soul carried a deep regret, an understanding of the importance of forgiveness that had come too late. They were waiting, one by one, to face their judgment. The weight of their unspoken apologies and unresolved grievances hung around them like chains. The vision grew darker still. I saw a place of torment, a realm filled with suffering so profound it defied comprehension. It was not merely a fiery abyss, as I had heard described before, but a place where despair and anguish reigned supreme. The cries of the souls echoed endlessly, a haunting chorus of regret and sorrow. I felt my heart break as I witnessed this. And then I saw him, the man in white, standing among them, tears streaming down his face. His grief was immeasurable, a sorrow born out of love for those who had chosen this path. The scene shifted again, and I found myself back in the peaceful field. The man in white's face was heavy with emotion, and his voice trembled as he continued. "Unforgiveness is a poison," he said. "It corrupts the soul and blinds the heart. Those who hold on to bitterness cannot fully embrace the love I offer, for their hands are too tightly clenched around their pain." His words pierced me, and I felt an ache deep within my chest. I thought of my own life, of the grudges I had held, the apologies I had withheld. How often had I let my pride dictate my relationships? How many times had I chosen anger over understanding? The weight of my own unforgiveness settled on me like a heavy cloak. The man in white continued to speak, his voice filled with both urgency and compassion. "The year 2025 will be a time of reckoning," he said. "But it does not have to be a time of despair. Those who choose to forgive, to let go of their grievances, will find life and peace. The choice is yours to make." As he spoke, the vision of 2025 faded, and the serene field returned to view. I looked around at the others in the group. Their faces reflected a mixture of awe and sorrow, as though they, too, had been shown their own visions of what was to come. The man in white stepped closer. His eyes filled with a kindness that seemed to envelop us all. "Forgiveness is not just a gift to others," he said. "It is freedom for your own soul. Let go of the pain, the anger, the bitterness. Embrace love, and you will find life." I sat there, silent and still, as his words sank deep into my heart. I didn't fully understand what I had just experienced, but I knew it was something extraordinary, something I would carry with me forever. As I looked into the man in white's eyes, I felt a stirring within me, a call to act, to change, to let go of the burdens I had carried for so long. The vision of 2025 lingered in my mind as the man in white turned to address another group nearby. Though his attention shifted, I still felt his presence, his love, his call to forgive. And as I sat there in the field, I realized that this journey was far from over. It was only the beginning. I remained seated in the circle, my mind reeling from the vision of 2025 and the weight of the man in white's words. The vivid imagery of lives destroyed by unforgiveness, the cries of regret from countless souls, and the profound sorrow etched on his face lingered within me. Yet, amidst the heaviness of it all, there was a glimmer of hope, a belief that change was possible if only people embraced forgiveness and love. The man in white turned his gaze toward me, and though he had already moved on to another group, I felt as though he were speaking directly to my soul. His presence was overwhelming, but not in a way that inspired fear. Instead, it was a mixture of awe, reverence, and an undeniable pull towards something greater than myself. He walked among the groups, his movements fluid and purposeful, addressing those who sought him with a wisdom that seemed infinite. I found myself drawn to him again, rising from where I had been sitting. I hesitated for a moment before stepping toward a new circle forming nearby. The man in white had already begun to speak, his voice carrying a gentle authority that silenced the murmurs of those gathered. I quietly took a seat among them, my heart heavy with questions but eager to hear more. "This place you see," he said, gesturing to the serene beauty around us, "is a gift, a glimpse of what could be. Yet, this peace is not the reality for all. The path to this place requires surrender, humility, and love." His eyes scanned the group, and I felt his gaze rest on me for a brief moment. It wasn't a look of condemnation, but one of deep understanding, as though he could see every part of me, even the parts one hid from myself. He continued, "There is something I must show you, something that will prepare you for what lies ahead." Before I could comprehend his words, the vision shifted again. The tranquility of the field dissolved, replaced by a world in chaos. This time, the scenes were darker, heavier, and more harrowing than before. The year was 2026, and the consequences of continued unforgiveness had begun to manifest in even more profound ways. I saw natural disasters ripping through cities, hurricanes, earthquakes, and floods that left entire communities in ruins. The earth itself seemed to groan under the weight of humanity's collective bitterness and selfishness. People fled their homes, their faces etched with fear and despair. I saw families separated, children crying for parents they couldn't find, and individuals lost amidst the wreckage of their lives. The man in white's voice narrated the scenes, though I couldn't see him in the vision. When love is absent, division grows. And where division grows, destruction follows. The images shifted again, showing conflicts erupting across the globe. Nations were at war, their leaders consumed by pride and greed. The violence wasn't limited to battlefields, it seeped into neighborhoods and homes, turning people against one another. Trust was eroded, replaced by suspicion and hatred. Communities that had once thrived together were now fractured, unable to withstand the pressure of the turmoil around them. I saw faces I didn't recognize but felt as though I knew. These were people like me, mothers, fathers, friends who had once lived ordinary lives but now found themselves caught in extraordinary suffering. Their cries of anguish and pleas for mercy cut through me, each one a reminder of how far humanity had strayed from love and forgiveness. Among the chaos, a figure emerged, standing tall amidst the destruction. It was the man in white, his presence unshaken by the storm raging around him. He held his hands out, palms open, as if inviting everyone to come to him. His voice rang out, calm but firm, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened. The path to peace lies in love, not in hatred. Forgiveness is the key to healing." But few heeded his call. Most turned away, their faces hardened by anger and bitterness. I wanted to cry out, to beg them to listen, but my voice wouldn't come. I was merely a witness, unable to intervene. The vision grew darker still. I saw the year 2027, and the suffering had only deepened. Where there had been natural disasters and wars, now there was famine, disease, and despair. Crops withered in the fields, rivers ran dry, and the land itself seemed to rebel against humanity's unyielding pride. People wandered in search of food and water, their bodies frail and their spirits broken. The cries of children haunted me, their innocent voices a stark contrast to the horrors unfolding around them. The man in white's voice grew more urgent. "This is not the destiny I desire for you," he said, his tone heavy with sorrow. "But the choice lies with each of you. Forgiveness is not a weakness, it is the strength that binds hearts together. That heals what is broken." The vision shifted one last time, returning me to the peaceful field. The contrast between what I had seen and where I now stood was almost unbearable. My heart ached with the weight of the suffering I had witnessed. And yet, the man in white remained calm, his presence a steady anchor in the storm of my emotions. He stepped closer to the group, his gaze soft but piercing. "You have seen the consequences of unforgiveness," he said. "But remember, the future is not yet written. What you have witnessed is a warning, a call to change. There is still time." His words filled me with a strange mixture of hope and responsibility. The weight of what I had seen pressed heavily on me, but his presence reassured me that change was possible. I didn't know how or where to begin, but I knew that I couldn't leave this place the same as when I arrived. As I sat there, the man in white turned his attention to another group forming nearby. His mission was clear: to share this message with as many as would listen. I watched him go, his movements fluid and deliberate, and I realized that my own journey wasn't over. There was more to see, more to learn, and more to do. I remained seated for a long time, processing the weight of what I had seen. The visions of 2026 and 2027 still lingered vividly in my mind, the devastation of natural disasters, the anguish of families torn apart, and the haunting cries of children lost in a world consumed by bitterness and division. Each image was a stark reminder of the consequences of a hardened heart. The man in white had spoken of forgiveness as the key to peace, and his words echoed within me like a relentless call to action. But I wasn't ready to move yet. My heart was heavy, and my spirit felt burdened by what I had witnessed. I wanted to understand more, to grasp the full scope of what was being shown to me. Slowly, I rose to my feet, my steps hesitant but purposeful, and made my way to another group forming in the distance. The man in white was there, as if waiting for me, his presence as calming and magnetic as ever. I settled into this new group, surrounded by others who, like me, seemed eager to listen and learn. The man in white began to speak again, and his words cut through the air like a blade not sharp, but precise and unyielding. Love and forgiveness are the foundation of life, he began. Without them, the heart hardens, and the soul withers. But with them, even the deepest wounds can be healed. His words resonated deeply, but I couldn't ignore the urgency in his tone. There was something more he needed to show us, something even more critical. As if sensing my thoughts, he raised his hand, and the serene beauty of the field faded once more. A new vision unfolded, one that would pierce me to my very core. I saw a world plunged into chaos. But this time, the scenes were not just about external destruction. They were deeply personal, focusing on individuals and their choices. The year was still 2027, and the consequences of unrepentant hearts were on full display. I saw people clinging to grudges with a ferocity that consumed them. Their anger twisted their faces and hardened their hearts, leaving them blind to the love that surrounded them. One scene stood out vividly. I saw a family gathered around a dinner table, their expressions tense and distant. Words of love and connection were replaced with silence and cold glances. Unspoken grievances hung in the air like a dark cloud, choking the warmth out of the room. A father sat at the head of the table, his face etched with bitterness. His children avoided his gaze, their own faces marked by a mixture of resentment and fear. It was a tragic portrait of a family broken by unforgiveness, and it was a scene that repeated itself across countless homes. The man in white's voice broke through the vision, his tone heavy with sorrow. "This is what happens when forgiveness is withheld," he said. "Relationships crumble, families disintegrate, and love is lost." The vision shifted again, this time to a series of funerals. I saw loved ones mourning the sudden loss of fathers, mothers, children, and friends. The grief was palpable, but beneath it lay a deeper sorrow, regret. The faces of those left behind were marked by the pain of words left unsaid, apologies never given, and bridges burned beyond repair. And then I saw something even more harrowing. I saw the same souls who had passed away, now standing in line, waiting for judgment. Their faces were filled with a mixture of fear and regret as they realized the weight of their choices. Each soul stepped forward, one by one, to face an unseen force that seemed to measure their lives. The man in white spoke again, his voice quieter but no less impactful. "The burden of unforgiveness does not end in death," he said. "It follows the soul, binding it, preventing it from entering into the fullness of peace." My heart ached as I watched the endless line of souls, each one bearing the weight of their unresolved pain. And then, the vision shifted once more, taking me to a place I could barely comprehend. It was a realm of torment, unlike anything I had ever imagined. The suffering there was not just physical but spiritual, a deep and abiding despair that consumed everything. I heard the cries of souls trapped in this place, their voices echoing with anguish and regret. They pleaded for another chance, for the opportunity to forgive and be forgiven. But it was too late. The man in white stood among them, his tears flowing freely as he watched their suffering. His grief was immense, not born of judgment but of love, a love that longed for them to have chosen a different path. He spoke again, his voice trembling with emotion. "I gave you the power to forgive, to love, to heal, but so many chose anger, pride, and bitterness instead. My heart weeps for the opportunities lost, for the love rejected." The vision faded, and I found myself back in the peaceful field. But the serenity of the place did little to ease the ache in my chest. I looked at the man in white, his face still heavy with sorrow, and I felt an overwhelming urge to speak. "What can we do?" I asked, my voice trembling. "How do we stop this from happening?" He turned to me, his eyes filled with a compassion so deep it nearly broke me. "The answer lies within each of you," he said. "Forgiveness is a choice, one that must be made daily. It is not easy, but it is necessary. Let go of your anger, your pride, your need for vengeance. Embrace love, even when it is difficult. That is the path to life." His words settled over me like a balm, soothing the turmoil within me. I knew he was right, but I also knew how difficult it would be to live out his teachings. Forgiveness was not something I had practiced often, and the idea of letting go of my own grievances felt daunting. Yet, as I looked into his eyes, I felt a stirring within me, a spark of determination. I didn't fully understand what lay ahead, but I knew I couldn't remain the same. The man in white had shown me the stakes, and now it was up to me to respond. As he moved to address another group, I sat quietly, reflecting on everything I had seen. The visions of 2026 and 2027 had revealed the devastating consequences of unforgiveness, but they had also shown the transformative power of love and reconciliation. I didn't know how much more I would be shown, but I was ready to learn. The man in white moved gracefully toward another group gathering in the distance, and I sat quietly, letting the weight of what I had witnessed sink into my heart. The visions of destruction, pain, and regret were impossible to shake. Yet, his words had also planted a seed of hope.